right, my name is Heather Gray, and this is Just Peace on WRFG Atlanta, and I'm with co-producer Nadia Ali. Tonight we're going to be talking about urban gardening, urban farming with Rashid Nuri. Before I go any further, though, I want you to know that the opinions expressed on Just Peace do not necessarily reflect those of Radio Free Georgia Broadcasting Foundation, Incorporated, its staff, or volunteers, and portions of the program are pre-recorded. And I'm pleased to say that I have here in the studio with me Rashid, as well as Ernest, who is going to join us in some of this discussion. Rashid, you are an urban gardener, urban farmer. How do you like to call yourself, actually? An urban gardener, an urban farmer?
Rashid
Nuri.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So, all right. So, as a description of the work you do, what do you like to say you do?
Good evening, Heather.
Good evening, Rashid.
It's a pleasure to be with you
here.
here.
Well, it's great to have you here.
At WRFG
Atlanta.
FM 89.3
That's
Atlanta.
Right, on the FM dial.
On the
To
FM.
the left of the dial, I might add.
That's quite true.
It is true.
And this is the home. I like this station because you have such intelligent listeners, intelligent programs, and you can't listen to RFG if you can't think. So that makes it a pleasure to be here.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Good. Nice introduction. So now tell us about your work. How do you like to describe what you do?
Urban agriculture. I am an urban farmer. It's one of the things that I do. And our company is Truly Living Well, the Center for Natural Urban Agriculture, and we grow food in the metropolitan area of Atlanta. We have 4 sites scattered around the city. We're very excited about our newest one, which is in the old 4th Ward. We have 8 acres right in the center of the city, midtown, downtown, we're very excited about. Truly Living Well has, we have 3 principal legs to our program. We grow food, we grow quality food. We know it's quality because people tell us. It's not my thought, it's the people who consume our product tell me they like it very much. We sell food to individuals. We have a community-supported agricultural program. We sell it to restaurants and to stores. The second leg is agricultural education. We provide horticultural literacy. We teach people who grows their food, how they grow the food, and the quality of the food. Most people have no idea where their food comes from. We try to help them with that, as well as providing technical expertise in how to grow the food. And the third aspect, we use the food and the training education to engage in community building and community development. I think that's the most important part of our work. And all of it I characterize as a pedagogy of transformation, or a transformative pedagogy. We're teaching people how to transform the soil, transform themselves, transform the community through this work, growing food.
So you have a long history of this, Rashid. You've been doing this for quite some time.
Different aspects of it, yes.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that, because your interest in agriculture started, actually on your website, and I sent this out around the city, that you were introduced when... Well, you went to Harvard, and I know you don't like to admit you went to Harvard. you are more likely these days to admit that you did this. We will forgive you for it, but
well,
you know,
yeah, that's true.
But you were introduced to something. Well, you can talk about Harvard in just a moment, but you were introduced to a farm called Wilson's in Boston. That was very was inspirational for you.
Yeah, as you look back on one's personal history, and now the age I am, I can talk about 30, 40, 50 years ago without any difficulty. And in 1967, I did see a farm, Wilson's Farm, which is in the middle of Lexington. Lexington, Massachusetts is an upper middle class neighborhood. It's where the American Revolution supposedly began. And the Wilsons have been there since 1884 growing food. And they have 38 acres right there in the middle of the city. And I always said, wow, because you can see that my in-laws' house backed up onto one of their fields. So you could actually see food growing out there in the middle of the city, and I thought that was way cool. When I first saw Wilson Farm, I wasn't quite, didn't know that agriculture was going to be my profession, but the seed certainly had been planted and it's stuck with me for all these years.
Yeah. So that inspired you, and then you ended up getting a degree at the University of Massachusetts in soil. We're focusing on soil.
Yeah,
I've been curious about this, Rashid. So what did you do in that course? I'm just curious.
Well, a little bit out of sequence, but yeah, that was graduate school. I went to
Graduate school.
Yeah, University of Massachusetts, and got a degree in plant and soil science. And they touch parts of a plant, the substratum of the soil, how soil is constructed. And I also did a lot of work in economics, statistics, those aspects of it, because my interest was national development, how you build countries. That's what I did as an undergraduate. And once I determined that I wanted to know all about food from the seed to the table, being a quintessential urban man, I had to go learn something about the agriculture. So I did take this degree in plant and soil science so I could have a fundamental understanding of the language and the connections that you can find from scientific agriculture. But I had to quickly unlearn all that knowledge to get to where I am today.
Well, that's fair enough. And we want to get into some of that. Okay, so I know I was out of sequence. Let's go back to your undergraduate degree, because that, I think, has also informed a lot of what you're doing today. So,
absolutely.
So what was that? What did you do?
I was interested in national development, how you build countries. My degree was in government. I was in the government department, political science. I looked at the men and women who created the post-colonial world. And this began basically at my birth. India was the first country, the post-colonial country, a major country to gain its independence in 1947. And I was born in 1948. And so I wanted to look at all the men and the women who created this post-colonial world, looking at what happened in Asia and Africa. And one of the things that underlied all of it was the fact that in order to call yourself a nation, you got to be able to feed, clothe, and shelter your people. And in the 60s, we were talking about black power and nation building, and I felt that I needed a practical skill. Now, I did go to Harvard College, which I hadn't usually told people until I came to Atlanta and started doing this work. And at the college, they don't really teach you how to do anything. The college is distinguished from Harvard University, which has the grad schools where you learn how to be a doctor, a lawyer, an educator, psychiatrist, a psychologist, an architect. That's where all the professional schools are. As an undergraduate, what they do is they help you, teach you to think and give you the opportunity to read books and discuss ideas. And the ideas that I was interested in is those that people who are building this new world that they came up with, and we discussed.
Why have you not wanted to admit that you went to Harvard?
See, Groucho Marx once said that he did not want to belong to any club that would have him as a member, and I felt that many of Harvard. When you tell people you go to Harvard, they either put you on a pedestal or hold you in great disdain.
Yeah.
And so rather than even engage in any of that process, it wasn't anybody's business, because I thought what was most important, let's deal with the ideas, let's deal with the work. That's what the focus needed to be upon, rather than where you went to school, what your pedigree is. But now that I'm engaged in this urban agriculture, where farmers are looked down upon, farmers are considered by many to be one of the least occupations. So if there's any prestige associated with Harvard, I want to lend it to the work, not to me, but to the work. So if it'll help people give credibility to all those who are engaged in agriculture and different aspects of agriculture, then I can say I'm a Harvard man, because I can get a job, but I like not having to suit up anymore. That's cool. Just put on some jeans and go to work.
Which is what you do every single day.
Yeah, every now and then I crash. Boy, last night I went home, I fell out after putting in 10 hours out there in the field. Yes.
Right. Okay. Now, so you had this experience in your college years, and you went out and you did your master's also in soil science. But then, when that is just the beginning of your career, Rashid, you have lived in Africa and Asia. You've worked in about how many countries? 35 countries?
A little more than that, yeah.
How many countries then?
36.
All right, 36. All right. So just a little bit more. But one of the things that you've talked about in your experience in agriculture in different parts of the world, and I know you were working in agribusiness actually, is that you observed the production and distribution of food. But, so you've said you've observed the production and distribution of food, but I've not heard you really discuss what that was. What was it that you learned when you were observing this in Africa and Asia? And you want to talk a little bit about the various countries you were into, but what did you learn in Asia, for example, about the production and distribution of food that informed you? And then Africa after that. That's a loaded question. I've asked you a lot of questions at one time, I know, but let's start with Asia.
Well, in Asia, I had a chance. We lived in Singapore. I was based in Singapore. In the 3 years that I was in Singapore, the longest I ever stayed was 2.5 weeks. It was during one Christmas holiday season.
Stayed where?
At home. Okay. On the island of Singapore. Singapore is an island state,
right
at the tip of Malaysia,
right.
On the China Sea. And I was traveling constantly throughout all the non-communist nations in Asia, from Pakistan in the west to Philippines or Japan in the east, whichever is the furthest that way.
Okay.
And I looked at it. It depends on which country. I made dozen trips to Pakistan, and we were engaged in looking at the seed business, seed business, animal feed business, the poultry business. We looked at oilseed production businesses. In my job, my title was Regional Investment Manager, and I was looking for investment opportunities for the country, for the company. I worked for Cargill. So I traveled. I spent at least 6 months in Indonesia, where I worked on the poultry feed business. We looked at various opportunities there. I introduced PC. They did not have computers out there when I went out and introduced it to all the facilities there, taught them, did quality control work. So what I learned is it all just fits in pieces around the agribusiness industry. There are a lot of people who have a greater depth of knowledge in any specific area. I know a man who did 55 crops in a year down in South Georgia, growing soybeans, cotton, and peanuts. And there's nothing I can tell him about soybean, cotton, or peanuts, but he's never run an oilseed processing plant. He's never grown 30,000 rose bushes. He hasn't seen how they grow food out in Asia. So I feel that at this stage of my career, I have a breadth of information that I've been blessed to obtain that not many people have, and that's what I try to bring back to the community.
All right. We're just going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a moment.
Seven Onda Natural Foods Market has an annual spring election for the Board of Directors coming up. It will begin April 17 and run through April 24th. There will be 9 seats available this election. The board sets policy for and is responsible for the strategic vision and long-term planning of the cooperative. Board members are involved in financial and personnel oversight, strategic planning, connecting to the member owners to find out what's important to them, and outreach with other cooperatives. While experience in any of these fields is useful, it is not a prerequisite for board membership. What is more important is the ability to organize and to work closely and cooperatively with the other directors. A board member must also be committed to providing the time and energy necessary to accomplish the board's objectives during the various committee and monthly meetings. If you are interested in running for the board this year, the nominating committee's next open house is Wednesday, February 16th at 6:45 p.m. at 7 Onda. There we will answer any questions a potential candidate may have about serving the co-op and community. If this sounds interesting to you and you wish to serve your fellow member owners in this capacity, candidate packets are available at the Customer Services Desk at 7 Onda or by email at nomcom@7onda.coop, spelled NOMCOMM at SEVANANDA.coop, or you can go to the website 7onda.coop, click on the tab marked 2011 Election Updates. The deadline for all candidate statements and photographs is Tuesday, March 1st. This is a public service announcement brought to you by your listener-supported community radio, WRFG 89.3 FM and WRFG.org, your station for progressive information.
The 35th Annual WRFG Peach Blossom Bluegrass Festival will take place Saturday, April 2nd at the Clarkston Community Center. If you, your business, club, group, or organization would like to participate in this landmark event, there are numerous sponsorship opportunities available. Contact WRFG Business Office today at 404-523-3471 for details on how you can become a sponsor.
Again, my name is Heather Gray, and the program is Just Peace, and we're talking with Rashid Nuri about urban farming, urban gardening, and about his experiences in different parts of the world and how that's now being expressed in what he's doing here in Atlanta. Rashid, I just want to talk a little bit about, you were talking about your observations of agribusiness and how it worked, but I'm curious, both in Asia and Africa, what you learned about the community in agriculture. What was it? What did you learn from that international experience?
Oh, a lot, a tremendous amount. First, civilization began when man settled in one place and began to grow food. If my children are going to be taught, someone has to be able to feed the teacher. If I have a doctor who's going to take care of my health, someone's got to take care of the doctor and provide food for him. So when man settled, agriculture is the first or second profession, depending on how you count, and it's a requisite for community building and community development. So you'll find that in countries that are much less urban than you'll find in Europe and America, food plays a central role in the community. The whole cycle is built around producing food for the community. The reason that we have vacations during the summer here in the West is because traditionally the summers when the crops had to be harvested so the children couldn't be in school, they had to be home to help take care of the community. So this is, so if, as you every place that I've been, you see that food plays a central role. And the less mechanized it is, the more families are involved. If you look at pictures, even when the U.S. was bombing Vietnam, you see the women out in the field with the babies on their backs growing the rice, and people out in the rice paddies. It was a community effort. The rice would go, those villages, the rice would go into community storage because that food was grown for the community. It wasn't an individual. Most places in the world, people have no concept of land ownership. That's foreign. The land comes from God, and it's our responsibility to husband that land and utilize that land to provide food for us. So it's a totally different concept than we have here in the West and in America, where you own a piece of land and you can bar other people from coming onto your land. There's no communal thought process that goes into providing food for the community. And you see that. I saw this everywhere, everywhere. People grow food. People feed each other. And if you come from a village, it's the village. You've heard it said, Hillary Clinton made the phrase significant. It takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to feed itself. If you're going to grow out, whether you're in Africa growing yams or cassava, everybody's getting out in the fields and doing that work to grow the food.
Yeah, it's really interesting, a different concept altogether about the growing of food in other parts of the world compared to most of the Western world, I think. So that's just really interesting. You know, one of the things, and one of the reasons that I wanted to begin some of this discussion with you, Rashid, is that this is February. It is Black History Month, and I know that one of the individuals that you have studied a lot and who has inspired you is George Washington Carver. And I wondered if you would speak a little bit about that, about Carver.
George Washington Carver is a remarkable man. Anybody that's gotten an email from me, my closing out of it has a quotation from him, which is simply service that measures success. And I thought that was very important. He's a remarkable man. He sacrificed so much. We want to talk about a pedagogy of transformation. He saved the South. If it was not for George Washington Carver, the South would have been gone by now as an agricultural entity. The soil had been played out. Cotton is still king in the world. However, it's the most valuable crop out there outside of marijuana, opium, and that kind of stuff. It's cotton. And the South was built upon cotton. The Civil War had cotton as one of the bases for the reasons that the war was even fought. The show is not about that. George Washington Carver when he got to Tuskegee, all the land in the area had been depleted by cotton, and he showed people how to utilize crop rotation. He introduced the peanut, not so much to eat the peanut, but to replenish the nutrients in the soil that had been mined from the growing of cotton. He introduced crop rotation, adding sweet potatoes as well as the soybeans and the peanuts into the land. So that the soil could be replenished in order to be able to grow the cotton. If you grow the same crop in the same piece of land, after a while you're going to deplete it of all the nutrients that go to that particular crop. Something else might grow, but the soil gets depleted. And cotton draws, it's a very, very heavy feeder, pulling stuff out. So by introducing this crop rotation, he taught people how to compost. And then as a subsequent to all of that, or as a consequence of that, you had all these other crops that had now been grown. What are you going to do with the soybeans? What are you going to do with the peanuts? What are you going to do with the sweet potatoes? So from that, then he began to develop all the other products that he's really become famous for. But the thing that I think is, whether he didn't really do peanut butter, but he did a lot of the other things. Most of you'd be amazed at the extent to which soybeans are used in manufacturing, and some of the crops that have come out now that are used in manufacturing. He invented hundreds of different uses of all of these various materials. But the significant thing is that he transformed agriculture in the South. That's the key.
He transformed it primarily because of teaching people about rotation and really about soil.
Yes, yeah. He
primarily about soil.
Well, it was an integrated approach. It was truly organic. What he was showing folks. I mean, he did demonstrations. He had wagons that go out to show people. He wrote pamphlets on different aspects. He taught people how to can food. I mean, he was an agricultural educator in the finest sense of the word. He was also an artist. He was a teacher. He was a scientist. He was a researcher. He was a spiritualist. He really understood plants. He able to talk to plants and understood how plants can talk to you, how the soil can talk to you. And so the spiritual aspects of George Washington Carver's work do not often get talked about. Most people want to think he invented peanut butter, and that's as far as they go. But he was a spiritual being, and again, the sacrifices that he made. I'm going to tell you a little known fact about George Washington Carver. When he went to college, and he was born a slave, grew up in the Midwest, Iowa. When he wanted to go to college, he was the only black person to go to his school. There may have been one or two others. In order to do that, he had to sacrifice his manhood. He was a eunuch. Okay, he gave up his sexual organs in order to get this education and come down here and do this work. People don't know that. They lead us out the books. You go find there's a few people around who still knew George Washington Carver. There are only about 3 or 4 films where you actually hear his voice. He got the voice of a 7-year-old.
Wow.
Okay? And they don't tell you this in the history books because that just demonstrates the cruelty of the slave and economic system that existed in this country. So in order for this man to go and get a master's degree in agriculture, which he did, and he was teaching out there when Booker T. Washington asked him to come to Alabama.
Was that in Iowa?
Yes, it was in Iowa. And this is what this man gave up to do this work to help not only his people, but all of the South. I think his original intention was to help black people. Okay, to help his people, but his work extended far beyond any racial bounds that existed at the time.
Now, Rashid, he was castrated because they didn't want him associating with white women. Is that right?
Yeah, white girls up there. No black men doing that.
Yeah,
that's real.
Yeah.
Hey, this is 125 years ago. What year are we at? 135 years ago. 140 years ago, I guess. Actually, he's going to, and you see how racial relations are today. You can imagine what it was back then. So for him to even, it's remarkable that a black man got a master's degree at a major agricultural institute in this country, number one. And then to do that, that was the price he had to pay.
I want to mention just one other thing about George Washington Carver is that when he was at Iowa, he mentored Henry Wallace, who ended up being the Secretary of Agriculture under Roosevelt in the 1930s.
Yeah, well, Henry Wallace, yes, ma'am, that is true.
What are you going to say about Henry Wallace? Go ahead.
Well, Henry Wallace had a very significant role in introducing, he's the one that hired a Borlaug to go and start hybridizing wheat, corn, and rice. And he very much promoted chemical agriculture, commercial agriculture in this country. So Wallace that was one of his contributions that he made.
Well, the other thing was some of the New Deal policies that he came out with, but which you might or might not agree with. I don't know.
I think on the agricultural side, I have a problem with it. My work is trying to reverse the negative effects of some of the policies that Henry Wallace introduced.
All right,
at
fair
that
enough,
time.
fair enough. Well, let's just go back to your career. And now, when you were just out of college, I'm not sure of all the sequence of this, but you came to Georgia, Rashid. You keep coming back to Georgia. So now tell us, you were down in South Georgia. Tell us about that experience.
This is my third time living in Georgia.
It is. I mean, it's interesting.
It's something that keeps bringing me back in cumulatively. I've lived a lot of places, and cumulatively, I've lived longer in Georgia than I have any other place. The first time I came to Georgia was the first time that I came south, which was 1975. And when I arrived here, to find that you still had slaves, economic slaves in this country was just eye-opening for me. And anytime you got the same family farming on the same piece of land, living in the same shack that has one light bulb and no running water instead of outhouses, in 1975, you can't call them anything but slaves. And that was it was shocking to me that those kind of conditions still existed. I probably find some of it now. I haven't spent a lot of time in South Georgia much of late. But to see this, and I came representing the Nation of Islam. We had 13,000 acres of land, a 4,200-acre farm in South Georgia, and then another 9,000 acres on 2 sites over in Alabama. And at that time, I was in Turl County, just outside of Dawson, a little town called Brownwood, where my nearest neighbor was about a mile away. It was a beautiful location. The house we had 2 acres of oak trees and 4 acres of pecan trees around the house, and the pastures out in the back with the cows. We had a dairy, we had a chicken farm, horses running out there. It was an idyllic location for my children. I never had to teach my children about the birds and the bees because they right there could see all those animals. But we were with the 4,200 acres in Terrell County, and then just across the line, the road that runs from Americus down to Albany, Charles Sherrod had new communities.
Charles Sherrod now, I want to just mention Charles Sherrod, who was the head of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in Albany, and his wife is Shirley Sherrod, who has become renowned recently because of being fired from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We can talk a little bit about, but we've also talked with Shirley and Charles on Just Peace as well. Go ahead.
Well, here you had black people owning 10,000 acres of land right there in the heart of all this beautiful farmland that you have down there in South Georgia. So there are many of the powers that be that didn't like that very much. So I didn't get a lot of cooperation from my neighbors to let me know about the various ag programs. And I have to admit, at 27, 28 years old, I was way over my head being a city boy, but it was an awesome opportunity for me to learn and to grow, and I was fortunate to have some mentors, folks that helped me learn how to get around the country. And I made a lot of mistakes, you know. I mean, but it's only by God's grace that I'm still alive today because of some of the things that I didn't know that I probably would have known had I grown up there.
And some of the challenges. Why don't you talk about one of those challenges?
Well, one was quite major. The cotton industry is amazing. It's a story in itself, just how cotton is traded and grown and traded and around the world, distributed around the world. But what you do, you grow your cotton, and then the first thing that has to be done, and after you've harvested, you pick that cotton, you've got to take the seeds out of it, out of the boll, separate the seed from the lint. And that's what a cotton gin does. Gin and cotton is separating out the seeds from the lint. And how you pay for that, you take your cotton to the gin. The ginner gets to keep the seed, and you take your lint after it's baled up and take it back. Cotton is such a highly valued commodity that every bale of cotton is identity preserved. The underwear that you have on is made with cotton. If you go back to the manufacturer, he can tell you the exact bale that cotton came from, what field, what farm it originated at. That's how valuable the crop is. So the ginner takes the seed, he takes the lint off of it, putting it in acid. So you got linters is one of his products. He can crush it for oil, cottonseed oil. You can crush it for cottonseed meal, or you can clean up those seeds themselves and use it to plant back into the fields, to resell back in the fields. Now, I didn't know all that stuff. So I wanted my seed because we were going to grow things organically. So I argued with this man. I said, I want my seed. He says, no, you can't have it. I said, how are you going to tell me I can't have my seed? I'll pay you for this if that's how you work. Give me my seed. His son had to come out and separate us because it got pretty heated. And this was a quite grown man who owned this cotton gin. And hey, I was a young boy with a big, huge Panama hat on and a dashiki down in South Georgia where they lynched Negroes, okay? And come to find out that this man who I had to be separated from by his son was the local head of the Klan.
And so we're fortunate that we still have you around, is what you're saying.
That's the
Rashid.
point. That's the point of the story.
Point you're making. All right.
Because Walter Clyde, who was our farm manager, worked for the same man. When Martin Luther King came through Albany and had his march back in the early '60s, Walter Clyde joined him. And how he got punished? Walter was inside a cotton gin. He's a mechanic. He was inside a cotton gin fixing it one day, and the same man turned on that machine, cut off his feet, so he had no toes. Evil man.
All right.
Evil man. All right. So now to hear those stories, and to know what happened with him, and that I'm still alive, it's by God's grace. I'm supposed to be here doing what I'm doing now.
Makes sense. Makes
Amen.
sense. I just want to tell you all that you're listening to WRFG Atlanta 89.3 FM. The program is Just Peace, and we're talking with Rashid Nuri about his agriculture experience. And we want to talk about Wheat Street. We take a break and play a little bit of music. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay tuned.
Take the seed that you have and plant it here. Give it water and time for a day or a year. Take the seed that you have and plant it here. Give it love. 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 Take the dream that you have and dream it here. Give it courage and time for a day or a year. Take the dream that you have and
Again, my name is Heather Gray, and the program is Just Peace, and I'm here with co-producer Nadia Ali, and we're talking with Rashid Nuri, who is, I'm still not sure how you're saying this, Rashid, you're an urban farmer. Urban farmer?
That's fair enough. Yes.
Organic urban farmer at that.
Yes.
Organic urban farmer. Now, we're going to have you on, and we're planning on doing a series of shows with you. So we're not going to go into all the organic production tonight. But we'll do that in subsequent shows where we can go into some detail about that. But do want to talk about Wheat Street, the Wheat Street Garden that just was launched in December. In fact, we had you on the show actually just prior to that launching. And I know this is something that you've wanted to do for some time. You've wanted to, this space has been available, and you really wanted to do something in this space. And I will say that this is really incredibly significant to me, because this is one of the few times ever that Atlanta has had an urban garden like this in the center of the city. I mean, it's really quite remarkable. So now, you wanted to do this, Rashid. Tell us why.
Well, this is not the first time. I got a picture, a drawing, a sketch that was done of over in Vine City. They had a large farm there, and there was greenhouses and raised beds, very similar to what we're doing now. And this was done like in 1883. So you can't say that it's unique.
I said one of the first.
There you go.
I did qualify it.
You're good, Heather.
I did qualify it. So, all right.
Because one of the things what we do is there are a lot of people who do what we do, and.
What do you mean, a lot of people that do what you do around the country?
Yeah, there's a lot around the country, around the world. People grow food. So in a global context, what we're doing is not that remarkable. But what is insignificant is the fact that we are doing it now, where we are doing it, considering how Atlanta has developed. This land became available. Is available in the middle of the city, right in the old Fourth Ward, due to the work of Reverend William Holmes Borders. He was an absolutely remarkable man. He had the foresight to buy 22 acres. To go back a little step further, where the junction of 85, the connector, 85 and Highway 20, used to be the black community. Okay, and then to build that neighborhood, and they had to tear down all the houses. All right, to put the interstate, just the connector to come through off downtown was also a black neighborhood that got torn down. So William Holmes Borders had the foresight to go to the Atlanta Housing Authority. They had divided up this land in the old Fourth. First of all, he helped people get housing back. They moved them out and helped them get houses, find houses for those who were living down where the 20 and 85 come together. Then he had the foresight. The Atlanta Housing Authority divided the land up in the old Fourth Ward into 14 plots. So he had the boldness, the audacity to walk in and say, I want to buy it all. They looked at him like he was crazy. So he went down to the Atlanta Life Insurance Company and got a bond from them and said, we'll give you $500,000 to buy this land. And the reason he was able to do that, because he had borrowed land to build his church and got it done 3 or 4 years ahead of time, so he had the credibility with the banks and the creditors to be able to do this. So he went in and made a bid, and they won the bid to buy that land. So he bought 22 acres in the old Fourth Ward in that area for $450,000 back in the late 50s and early 60s.
Wow.
Okay. Then the next step was to get those houses built. They had to work with he put together a coalition. First, he went around all over the city and talked to everybody he could in the white power structure. I think Hartsfield was still the mayor. It was towards the end of Hartsfield's campaign. Ivan Allen came in right after him. So he talked to them. He talked to all the civic leaders, got their endorsements, so that would minimize. He did that before he even bought the land, just to make sure there wasn't any opposition. So he bid on the land. They had the best bid on the land and bought that property down in the old Fourth Ward and built the housing. So then he had to work with the Department of Housing. I guess that's what they called it back then, to get the permission and the money lined up, because this was the first faith-based initiative, 8A housing, low-income housing, 501c3 nonprofit church building housing for the people in the community. That hadn't been done before, particularly by any black people. So he did this and opened it up in 1963. He built that project. So come the 2000s, it was the houses that had deteriorated. The church didn't have the wherewithal to keep them up. They had boarded them up, put everybody out, and it became a problem because you had the homeless moving in there, and there was a lot of violence and drugs and all the things associated with abandoned housing in that area. So they tore it down. So here in the middle of the city, you got this empty lot, 8 acres that's left. Actually, it's 11 acres there. It's half of what the original purchase was. And we could talk about William Holmes Borders for a long time. But the land was there. It took us about 2 years. We identified it. There were a couple other projects. There was other land that we looked at because we knew we needed to expand. There was other land that we looked at. But over the course of 2 years, we had one gentleman introduced us to it. Another group was going to help finance it, and we weren't making the headway we wanted to through one of these civic organizations. So I just finally said to my son, come on, I said, man, let's just go talk to these people direct. So we did, called them up, said, look, we want to farm on this land. And they said, okay. I mean, it took a while. It took about 6-8 months of negotiations to get the whole thing done. And we finally got the okay and signed the agreement on December 3rd and immediately went to work.
Wow.
That's the short story.
We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay tuned.
Come celebrate with us on April 2nd at the 35th Annual WRFG Peach Blossom Bluegrass Festival, featuring the great homegrown Georgia bluegrass music of the Mosier Brothers Band, Cedar Hill, Deja Bluegrass Band, Johnny Rockmore and the Apostles of Bluegrass, Steel String Session, Mars Hill Porch Pickers, Nathan McEwen, Counterpoint, Pool Mountain, East Dixie Boys, Whoa Nellie, and the Tucker Station String Band. The festival will be held at the Clarkston Community Center, located at 3701 College Avenue, Clarkston, Georgia, 30012. The doors open at 10:30 a.m. The music begins at 11 a.m. and continues until 9 p.m. Along with the music, there will be food, beverages, and craft and information vendors inside. The music and seating are indoors, so come early, rain or shine, and stay all day. General admission is $15 at the door, $12 for WRFG members, $6 for students over 6 years old, and seniors over age 60. Kids under 6 accompanied by adults are admitted free. Tickets can be purchased in advance through the WRFG business office for $12. Contact the business office at 404-523-3471 for details. Join us for the most legal fun you can have on April 2nd at the Peach Blossom Bluegrass Festival.
And again, my name is Heather Gray, and the program is Just Peace, and we're talking with urban farmer, organic urban farmer Rashid Nuri. And Nadia has a question. Nadia, go ahead.
I wanted to ask the land that you just finished describing that you purchased.
No, we didn't purchase it. No, I couldn't afford it. That land has, I know y'all don't like to talk dollars on this show. That land has gone up in value from the original $450,000 that he bought to what has been offered today. Is just an incredible amount of money.
Okay, all right. Well, the land that you are farming then, was that land ready for farming, or what did you have to do to make it ready for farming?
Well, we talked earlier about the pedagogy of transformation, transformative pedagogy, transforming the situation that we're in. That property was a housing project. You got pads out there where the houses existed. And if you come see it now, you would not really know that there were ever houses there. And that's what makes it fun to have people come through who say, oh, I lived here and my grandmother lived there, and point out where their houses used to be. But what we've done is on the concrete, we've taken out some of the concrete and asphalt. But right now we have 54 raised beds on 3 concrete pads. Okay, where we have raised beds where we're actually growing the food. Then another area, we took out a parking lot and we put beds there. We put a greenhouse on another slab. And then where the playground used to be is we've actually growing in the dirt. So we have transformed that neighborhood from a housing project. And what's really cool is that the sidewalks that existed in that housing complex now make nice walkways for people to be able to walk through the garden. We've already had people ask us, can we come over there and take our noontime walk through your garden? And the paths are already there. We just got to keep them swept. But all along the path, the walkways, we're in all the little spaces. We've got herbs and trees and shrubs that we've planted out there, trying to beautify it to make it not only a truly edible environment, edible landscaping, so that everything out there, just about everything out there you can eat, with the exception of the roses, which are absolutely fake. But I love them. Hybrid tea roses, I think, are just so drop dead gorgeous. I love them. So that's the one area. That's how I balance out all my organic, natural stuff by putting out something that is just absolutely unnatural, which is a beautiful tea rose.
Rashid, our time is going quickly, and I do have some more questions. However, I want you to give some contact information. If people want to get more information, what should they do?
My phone number is 404-520-8331. It's gotten a lot busier these days, so I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Send me an email to Rashid, Rashid, at trulylivingwell.com, as in I am truly living well, or we are truly living well. trulylivingwell.com, which is also our website.
All right. Now, what do you have planted already at Wheat Street?
We have, let me see where I'm going to start. You want to start with fruit, or flowers first?
Well, whatever you want to start.
All right, we got pomegranates, kiwis, raspberries, blackberries, scuppernongs, muscadine, apples, pears, plums, persimmons, pawpaw, figs, blackberries, raspberries, kiwis. We got all that. Then we got the vegetables we got plenty. We got garlic, spinach, carrots, beets, turnips, kale, collard. No, we don't have any collards. They're down the other side. Cabbage, broccoli. I'm looking around in my head. Lettuce, etc. Then we got herbs. We got oregano, thyme, marjoram, tarragon, lavender, mint. Flowers, we got 50 rose bushes. I got 600 lilies, 1,200 daffodils and tulips, and I'd forgotten a whole bunch.
Now, when are we gonna see the fruit? Pardon the pun, of all of this. When are we going to see this?
When can you start eating?
Well, that's a good question. When can we start eating this food?
Couple of weeks.
In a couple of weeks, my goodness, really.
Yeah, the lettuce will be ready in a couple of weeks.
Now, I want you all to know that this Wheat Street Garden was just launched in December of 2010. Mm-hmm. And there are now how many raised beds, Rashid?
54.
54 raised beds.
Yeah, 4 foot
all
by
these
24
things.
feet. Yeah.
Okay, now I know that you have a lot of folks helping with this garden as well. You have volunteers. I mean, can people volunteer and help?
Oh, anytime. Yeah, just call me, send me an email. Send an email to volunteer@trulylivingwell.com, and then Kamal can get all that mail.
All right, well, that's good. All right.
My big brother Ernest wanted us to mention all the children that come out. We're going to have a children's program this summer, a 2-week summer camp for the children. We're going to start classes in a few weeks. We anticipate events taking place in the garden. We'll have our market beginning in April. When the food comes off in prolifically will be beginning of April, and we'll have a market every Friday.
Now, I want to say to our listeners, I know that there are a lot of you all out there who would like to ask Rashid some questions. Our time is going quickly here, but he's going to be back. We're planning on doing this show monthly, and this will be an opportunity for all of you all to ask questions and learn more about gardening, because, Rashid, this is one of your missions, is it not? To be educating people on how to do this.
Absolutely. That's the second leg is agricultural education.
Agricultural education, right. And so you have classes with youth, but you also have them for adults as well.
Oh yes. Yeah. Everybody needs to get reconnected to soil. We have lost that connection with the soil. That whole concept of being grounded. You hear this phrase when you meet somebody who's flighty or little airhead. You say they're not very well grounded. Well, I mean, that comes from agriculture. You've got to put your hands in the soil, become grounded. There's so much peace and tranquility that you can earn and gain from spending time in the garden.
Now, I know that we have focused on the Wheat Street Garden, but we've not made reference to the fact that you have other gardens also in the city of Atlanta. So tell us about that briefly, and tell us about your market as well that you have in Washington Road.
We have 4 sites now. One down towards Fayetteville, one in Southwest, and then one on Washington Road, where we have a market every Wednesday afternoon from the middle of the afternoon until dusk.
What's the address?
3353 Washington Road.
Mm-hmm.
We've been, by God's grace, and this is our 6th season now. we've missed market day only once, and that was a month ago when we all got snowed in. We couldn't get out to the field on that Wednesday. Outside of them, we've had enough food to accommodate our customers. Now with the expansion to downtown, we will have that much more and make it more accessible to many people, having a midtown market, which we would do on Friday. So we'll have a Wednesday market and a Friday market.
In the time that we have left on the show, Rashid, I wish you'd share something about what really has been for you an inspiring experience with what you've been doing with gardens in Atlanta. I mean, either with someone who has been transformed by this or something that's been incredibly meaningful to you. Well,
that's an interesting question. And we have vignettes and stories I can tell, but I think that if there is I have been transformed through this work. And I think that's where it all begins at home. I mean, this work has enabled me to meet a lot of wonderful people, talk to folks, touch people on different levels, children, adults, learn so much about many people. I've always understood, but I've been able to further establish and demonstrate the commonality that exists between people. If you come to our market, we have people black, white, gay, straight. I mean, anybody you can imagine comes to our marketplace, and you can see them, and they're able to interact and talk because we have something that is very common, which is the food. And I don't think there's anything more intimate than sitting down and sharing a meal with somebody. Okay? And so that level of intimacy that we miss in urban society through the garden and through the garden work, you get doctors and lawyers next to convicts and drug addicts all working in the garden, right next to each other. And to be able to see people who are able to communicate there where they have not been otherwise, they would not otherwise, is transformative for them, and it certainly is for me also.
All right. Give your contact information one more time.
My
Please.
phone number is 404-520-8331.
And the website?
TrulyLivingWell.com.
All right. Again, my name is Heather Gray, and the program is Just Peace. We've been talking with...
one word on that.
One word. What do you mean one word?
TrulyLivingWell.com.
TrulyLivingWell.com. We've been talking with Rashid Nuri about urban gardening, and he'll be back again. We're going to continue with this discussion. We want to get into all of the ins and outs of organic production and what's happening in the U.S. and the world in agriculture generally, actually. So, Rashid, thanks so much.
Well, no, thank you so much for having me, Heather. And the questions that you've asked have proven my point of what an intelligent station this is.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
You've asked good questions, and I've enjoyed this process. And I look for all those folks that may have wanted to ask questions. I look forward to getting back with you in the future. And call me, and we'll do it now if you want.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Nadia. Stay tuned.
All right, stay tuned now for Revolutionary African Perspectives, Rap with Sebukwe Shakura.
May the gentle rain fall on the dry soil of your heart. May